Hey, what's up guys? Nils here and welcome back to another video. So today's video we're gonna discuss about passives and a tier list because of all the new passives that were added to the game, as well as a lot of balance changes ever since the last time we did it. This has been heavily requested, so I decided to get on top of it. So this is my list again. Some of you may not agree with that, but anyway, let's jump onto the list. So obviously God is on a league of its own. It's different than anything else. Like, it's just too broken compared with anything else. And as a fact of the matter is that you can play this game and you may never pull God. So a lot of you will probably not see this, probably including me, because knowing my luck, I'm never gonna get it. But anyway, God was even buffed on this update, so it's even more stronger. So it used to be 1.85 damage multiplier. Now it actually has a ×2 damage multiplier. We have 50% attack speed increase, we have ×3 movement speed, a little bit of a size increase, and we have -3 attacks to our ultimate. So this is the all-around passive that has a little bit of everything, and it's actually fucking broken. Anyway, moving on to some passives that are a little bit more approachable. On the S+ tier, we have Blessing. Now, I believe Blessing to be the best passive in the game. All around, well, maybe Blizzard or Yeti in some situations is better, but since they're not in the game anymore, Blessing is the best passive for me right now in the game that is accessible, and that is due to the fact that the units right now, they don't really seem to have such a high attack count, right? So like you have Mewtwo on 3, so Ghostly or Blizzard would have highly diminished value, and even like on a red bat with 7 units, I would still take Blessing over Ghostly, probably. Because if you have like 2 of them, they would be distinct anyway. But then again, if you have Ghostly, you probably synergize them with Mewtwo better in terms of ultimate cancelling. I don't know. But yeah, Ghostly should have been on S+ tier actually. That was my initial thought. But I just didn't put it because it's like a mini version of Blizzard. And that was my thinking. That's why I didn't put it. But anyway, Blessing 0.90%. It hasn't changed. Now pay attention to the drop rates, or the reroll rates rather, because a lot of them have changed on this update and on the previous one. So next up we have Blizzard. Now this passive used to be by far the best in the game when Redbat was 15 attacks to ultimate. Now it's only 7, so its value has slightly diminished, although it's still very good. So if you have it, it's definitely a very, very strong passive. 50% increased damage and 100% increased attack speed. So you basically attack 2 times faster, as well as 3 times more movement speed, which is never bad, especially when you have to clean a lot of side lanes when you play solo. Next up, we have Yeti. Now, Yeti is basically tactical 3 for everything except the fact that you are a little bit slower. So as you can see right here, ×2 damage on Yeti, and the only drawback is that you have a 30% attack speed reduction and 20% movement speed reduction. You're also pretty huge, which looks pretty cool, so yeah, definitely probably the best looking passive I would say in the game. And next up, we have Solid Gold. Now, Solid Gold in terms of damage doesn't really perform as well as the rest of these passives. However, it is in S+ tier strictly due to its utility, giving you the 0.4 yen multiplier. So having like Solid Golds in your main lineup, it's gonna increase your yen earn by so much. It's actually crazy if you think about it. So Solid Gold, 1.75 damage increase, just like Blessing. That being said, Solid Gold has a 0.8 attack speed multiplier and a 0.75 movement speed multiplier, so you attack a little bit slower and you move a little bit slower as well. It's not really considerable slow, it's not like you walk super slow, but it is there, just so you know. And it also has a 50 times sell value, in case that might interest you for whatever the reason. Now at 0.13%, it hasn't changed the rates, so it's basically the same passive, nothing new here. Next up, we have Lucky 3. Now, as you can see, I put it last in the S+ tier because it's not really a passive that you want to have on your main team. But if you get your hands on Lucky 3s, which is why you should probably do massive raids from the old worlds and just roll on units with 1 shard each to try and get them. Now, having 0.5 luck, guys, if you have 7 of these units, that's 3.5 extra luck. Now, it's not so much about like pulling more better units, like pulling secrets or whatever, like that doesn't really matter anymore, right? Because all of the attention is on the divines, and divines are luck proof, as you guys probably know by now. But that thing being said, the most important thing about this passive is that like it gives you such better odds on hatching rares, epics and legendaries, which increase your feeding dramatically. Like you get so much more XP when you're auto feeding in night and when you just open stars, that it just builds up, and it's actually crazy how strong this passive is. So get some of these old raids done, get these shards, and start doing rerolls to get a full team of luck 3. Moving on to the S tier, we have Ghostly. Now Ghostly, I would say, is still an S plus passive. I just didn't put it, as I mentioned earlier, because it's sort of a mini version of Blizzard. That is the only reason that I didn't include it in the S plus tier. Now Ghostly gives a 50% damage increase, just like Blizzard. That being said, it is a little bit slower on the attack speed part. You get only 50% attack speed increase, and you are basically a speed demon because you have 10 times extra movement speed. Ghostly is also at 0.30% chance to hatch, so it is still intact. Next up we have Tactical 3. A lot of people don't like it, a lot of people like it. I don't know, it's kind of one or the other, but yeah, I would say Tactical 3, especially if you don't play solo and if you play with other people. Insane passive, gives you 100% more damage than to bosses, so you do twice as much damage against bosses only. And as you notice, the rolls are 0.48% chance to get it, and this used to be previously 1%, so it's basically twice as hard to get now, because I think people have started realizing how strong it actually is. Now, next up we have Leader 3, and I put it here in S tier. This was also a passive that could be easily in S plus tier, and that's strictly due to one reason. So if you manage to get Leader 3 on good units, Leader 3 is gonna give you so much damage. Like if you manage to get like Leader 3s on secret units, which a lot of people did with the Christmas Leader, which was a very smart move, because Christmas Leader had a very good odd actually. So if you have like shiny secrets with Leader 3, they are gonna increase your damage and like your DPC, that your units are not attacking by so much. You guys have probably seen by now when we do high rooms, the strategy is basically we are using our 2 strongest units and full team of leaders. And now besides that strategy where you have like 12 people, so everybody has to use like only their strongest units on updates or like time periods such as this now, where we are basically incubating. So once our units, our 3 strongest units, are gonna get to level 250, the gap is gonna be so big from the rest of your units that you wanna be using Leader 3 units anyway. So if you have strong 3 leader units, definitely in S plus passive. But if you just roll like random units with low shards, I would put it on S tier. I wouldn't put it on S plus tier. 0.30% chance, so it's still a very rare passive. It's on the likes of Solid Gold, Lucky, and Ghostly. Very, very rare passive to get. So good luck getting on a good unit. Next up, Genius 3. One of the most underrated passive in the games by a lot of players. Unfortunately, the top players have started picking up on how good Genius is, and they have started using it. Now, your fighters take 50% less XP, which means that you can level them so fast. Now, I just want to make a quick note here. There was a strategy that a lot of people used where you basically leveled up a unit and then you turned it into shiny and then you fed it. That strategy doesn't work anymore. Now, when you feed, you only store the amount of XP that you fed. So if you shiny them up after, or the unit, it doesn't increase the XP that you get while feeding. Still an amazing passive when you want to push levels, so if you get it, make sure to keep it for a while until you push your unit to a very high level, but it gets very difficult. Now Genius 3 is 1%, that remained the same and there was no changes on this. Lastly, for this S tier, I put Generous. Generous was another Christmas passive, which was kind of correct. So you have like a mix of Solid Gold and Collector 3, but or Collector 4 rather, which doesn't really exist in the game. So if you have a team full of Generous, the amount of shards at your environment time trial are actually mental, and you also have this as like your Solid Gold units. Now it also increases your damage by 25%, which is also pretty damn cool, I would say. Moving on to the A tier, we start with Ace. Now Ace is really good and it's by far the best passive on this tier. It was also buffed this update, so besides the 100% crit that we initially had on Ace, We eventually got a 25% damage modifier, which was furthermore increased to 35% damage increase on this update. Now again, I personally do not think that Ace matches its percent drop. Like, you have 0.082%. That is so rare to get, it's actually very crazy. So in my opinion, even what it is now, it doesn't reflect to the value that you can roll this, but still very, very solid right now to use. So if you get it, keep it right now, it's very good. Next up, we have Giant. 1.65 damage increase. You have 20% movement speed reduction and you are a little bit bigger. Now, very, very solid passive. If you get it, definitely keep it. Do not re-roll it. I don't know, I would only re-roll this if I had maybe 300-400 shards at my disposal, I would say, because it's still a very solid passive and the chances of getting something better are honestly not that big. So great passive all around. 0.82% chance. I don't think this was changed. Let me just go ahead back real quick and have a look. So apparently Giant used to be 0.79%, so there was a tiny bit of a buff in terms of the drops, 0.82%. Moving on, we have Tank. So Tank is basically a budget Giant. You get the exact same damage increase, you are just much slower, moving at 50% of the normal movement speed, which honestly is annoying. Tanks are very annoying to deal with. Now, one thing you can do is you can unequip and re-equip your units, but when you're using leader units, you don't really want to do that. So Tank is just annoying, but still a very good passive. Well, it's a good passive. It's a very solid passive, per se. So Tank is now 1.1% chance. It used to be 1%, so they slightly buffed the chances of Tank, but yeah, it's still a very solid passive. Next up, we are starting to move on to passives that are not that good anymore. We have Strong 3. Strong 3 provides a 50% flat damage increase. It's definitely a solid passive and you should keep it until you have a lot of shards to reroll. And we have 1.3% chance to get Strong 3, so nothing has changed there in terms of drop rates. Now, Sorcerer 3, for those of you guys that remember this passive used to be a mythical for a long time. That being said, it's really bad. So 20% damage increase that was added later in the game. It wasn't really originally there when the game was introduced. But besides that, the main part of Sorcerer is that it reduces your attacks to ultimate, so we have -4 hits until ultimate on Sorcerer 3. Besides that, it's very bad, like it just doesn't add much. And another thing is that on units that have a low hit count, Sorcerer does really add no value at all. So it's a very situational passive that could be at best average on units that have a high hit count, so nothing crazy there. Now, Sorcerer 3 used to be 0.19% chance, and it was buffed to 0.34% when it was converted into a legendary. Next up, we have Collector 3. Now, I would normally put Collector 3 higher, but a lot of people cried about me putting it on S+ the last time I did the list, because they don't really understand, I guess, but it actually does. But anyway, you need a Collector T3 team, so you should have a full team of Collector 3 units when you farm the early Rooms of Time trial to increase the amount of shards that you can farm. It's mandatory to have it, and Collector 3 comes at a 0.55% chance, which is slightly buffed as opposed to 0.52 that it was on the previous patch. And now moving down to the B tier, these are passives that are not necessarily great, but if you get them, you can keep them until you have like a few shards to get. So basically my take on this is, if you get anything in the B tier, you should keep it until you get a whole bunch of shards, like at least 100 shards I would say, because the chances of getting something better are slim if you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 rolls. Anyway, starting up we have Tiny. Tiny has a 20% damage multiplier, a 50% attack speed multiplier, as well as running 5 times faster, and you are obviously Tiny as the name suggests. Now Tiny has a 0.82% chance to drop. It used to be 0.79, but with percent chances rebalanced this update, it was slightly buffed. Next up we have Tactical 2, basically a baby version of Tactical 3, 50% more damage to bosses at 2.7% chance to get. So it's another passive that is not really necessarily great, but until you get like a whole bunch of shards, I would still keep it because the chances are that you're gonna end up with a gray passive that's gonna be horrible. And the same principle applies to strong 2, 25% damage increase, and that's pretty much it. Now the last two passives are more so utility passives. Again, Genius, 30% to level faster is very good, like it's really underrated. Even Genius 2 is very good, and I would keep it and put some levels into my unit nice and easy, and then I would change it. And lastly, Reach 3, I put it in this tier because for players that are starting at the game right now and are quite fresh at the game, it's kind of hard to get your hands on solid gold units, so you want to start out by having some Reach 3 units to farm a little bit more yen. Now this is a passive that shouldn't be on your main team. You should just like swap when the boss has like 1% HP, you just swap to your rich units and you kill the boss. That's how it kind of works out. But anyway, that should conclude the list, guys. If you guys have a different opinion about something in this list, or if you have any questions, feel free to post something in the comments. But yeah, I hope this gave you a little bit of an insight on what is good right now, or what everything does right now, how the tuning has changed things, both from a power level or how they scale, or from their drop chance. But anyway, that was pretty much it for this video, guys. As always, if you enjoyed, make sure to click the like and subscribe button, and I will see you all on the next one. Take care.